Welcome to the Alzheimer's Society of British Columbia's webinar, Managing Responsive Behaviours in a Rapidly Changing Environment. This webinar has been developed for people living with dementia and their care partners in response to the current COVID-19 pandemic. There are many times when we may find ourselves in a situation where things are changing quickly. A health crisis, a weather event, a natural disaster could cause rapid changes to a person's situation, abilities, environment, and daily life. And sometimes non-crisis events, such as moving to a new house or experiencing unexpected delays while travelling, can force us to manage a rapidly changing environment. Being in a situation where our future is uncertain, when we are unsure of the next steps, and where we must monitor information for updates and changes can be stressful and exhausting. How we manage the events as they unfold, how we process the information that we receive, and how we take care of ourselves during challenging times will all be factors in how we respond to a rapidly changing environment and how our behaviour may change as a response to these factors. This webinar will explore some of the factors that may influence behaviour as a response to an uncertain and changing environment. As well, we will look at how dementia may affect a person's ability to manage ongoing and unexpected changes, to process information during rapid change when information flow is high, and how caregivers can support people living with dementia to manage their responses and hopefully reduce the occurrence of negative responsive behaviours. In this webinar, we will look at the definition of responsive behaviours, the challenges that are created by a rapidly changing environment, additional challenges for people living with dementia when managing change, and strategies for promoting well-being and hopefully reducing negative and unpleasant responsive behaviours. When considering the definition of responsive behaviours, we recognise that it's a term preferred by persons with dementia. The term is used to represent how their actions, words and gestures are a response that express something important about their personal, social or physical environment. Dementia affects many abilities that are factors in determining how a person responds. Many responsive behaviours are a result of changes in the brain that affect memory, communication skills, judgment, orientation, emotion regulation, and behaviour. The first step to managing our own responses and to support and understand the experience of the person living with dementia is to try to understand the meaning of the responsive behaviours we experience or witness by considering the physical, emotional and environmental elements that could be contributing to the behaviour. All behaviours have a reason, a cause and a meaning. The person with dementia might be trying to tell you something that they can't articulate because of changes in their ability to communicate. For example, I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm scared, or this is overwhelming may come out as agitation or distress. The person may be trying to tell you that they need something, but they are having difficulty saying what it is they need. For example, I'm lonely and I miss having tea with my friends. Or I need to take a break from watching the news. It's really upsetting. The behaviour itself could also be a way of meeting a need, as opposed to an expression of an unmet need. For example, the person may be pacing the hall to expend some of the energy they have while they cannot attend their regularly scheduled activities. Changes to behavioural responses might simply be related to physical or structural changes in the brain. For example, apathy and withdrawal can be due to changes in neurotransmitters. Lack of motivation could be due to structural changes in the frontal lobe. People living with dementia don't behave in uncharacteristic ways on purpose. These are symptoms of the disease of their brain. They are doing the very best they can to manage the situation and may be expressing challenges in communicating or responding appropriately. Responsive behaviours are very individual and can change from day to day, even hourly, depending on the bigger picture and our needs at the time. When we are tired, worried, unwell, hungry, uncomfortable, bored, or feeling isolated, we may have more difficulty responding to additional challenging stresses, especially rapidly changing ones. This is why it's so important for all of us to maintain our physical and emotional health during challenging times. We need to look at the bigger picture of wellness and try to remain healthy and build resilience in our new normal. When trying to understand why a person may be responding in a certain way, it is helpful to consider what in the environment could have triggered the behavior. Ask yourself, what just happened? And not just what just happened with the behavior, but what happened immediately before you saw the change in behavior. As well, look for consistencies. Is there a specific time of day that the behavior appears? Or do they become distressed while watching the news at 6 p.m.? An example that comes to mind, recently I was speaking with a caregiver, and while she was talking to me, she suddenly realized that her husband's behavior changes whenever they're doing noisy work renovating the downstairs condo from them. So she realized that it's probably the noise and the vibrations that are coming through that are really contributing to her husband's behavior. So from that, she was able to come up with some strategies to address that. While we are trying to identify what might be triggering the responsive behavior, it's also important to pay attention to consider the person's physical well-being. Sometimes responsive behaviors can arise when a person is in pain or not feeling well. Care partners should be looking for signs of physical illness or injury that could be affecting the person's behavior. You might need to consult their physician. When attempting to understand what a person's behavior may be telling us, it is important to consider all of the variables that may be affecting their ability to respond clearly and appropriately. You can watch a recorded webinar called Understanding Behaviour, offered by the Alzheimer's Society of BC on our website, to learn more strategies to help you understand why a person living with dementia might behave in responsive ways. But for today, I want to focus on how the effects of a rapidly changing environment may influence responsive behaviours. During times when we are managing a rapidly changing environment such as COVID-19 pandemic, it can help to identify some of the changes and challenges created so that we have a better understanding of some of the variables that may increase responsive behaviours. This will allow us to focus on making adaptations so that we control the influence that these variables have on how we respond. Listed in the screen are some common challenges we are all facing due to the recent and rapid changes that have occurred due to COVID-19. Since the middle of March, when our daily lives were impacted by the unexpected and unprecedented physical distancing requirements, we have been inundated by news, updates, briefings, and press conferences. The amount of information can be overwhelming, especially if we spend our days at home watching the news media. Much of what we learn from these information updates can be stressful or anxiety-provoking. Grief and worry are normal reactions to traumatic events and uncertain futures, but it is important to recognize that they can become overwhelming and reduce our ability to manage further challenges in a rapidly changing environment. The order to stay home as much as possible and to interact and engage with others outside our home as little as possible has affected all of our daily routines. Without being able to leave the house or participate in regularly scheduled activities in the community, many people find themselves with endless days at home. At a time when routine and familiarity would be a comfort, we are forced to adapt to a new normal at home. For information on activities to do at home and ideas for maintaining your routine, watch the recording of last week's webinar, which is available on the Alzheimer's Society of BC's website. Many of us have become distanced from our social networks. Not being able to spend time with friends and family can be very challenging. As well, prior to all of the changes, many people were receiving support such as personal care, meal preparation, housekeeping, or respite care that they may not be receiving anymore. That might, your loved one may have been going to an adult day program, to a community senior centre that has specific programs that they were participating in. You might have had home support workers coming in, either public or private agencies coming in. Now we don't have that. And finally, we are all managing an uncertain future. All of us are worried about the coronavirus. We fear getting sick or that our loved ones will. It's a big fear for the primary care partner that they'll get ill with coronavirus, and then what will happen to the person with dementia. I would encourage you to think about this and put a plan in place. We also worry about how much longer the situation will require us to adapt to rapid changes, and we wonder, when will we be able to return to normal and be able to see family and friends? These are just a few of the common challenges that a rapidly changing environment has probably created for some of us. By implementing strategies to adapt to the changes and manage the challenges, you can control many of the factors that can influence how you respond to change. For example, if you notice that you were feeling agitated, sad, or anxious after watching the news, decide how much you need to see to be informed and find other more relaxing activities to do. Perhaps pick 1 or 2 news sources and update yourself twice a day. If you are watching the news with a person living with dementia, be aware of the effects the exposure is having on them. Now I would like you to take a moment just to consider what challenges have arisen for you due to the rapidly changing environment of COVID-19. It could be that you've been feeling sad and bored and lonely at home. You might have noticed that a family member is more easily frustrated these days, that their fuse is a bit shorter. You may have had to take on more tasks and chores because you don't have people come in the house to help you, and you're probably feeling quite tired and overwhelmed. A family member may be upset every day that they cannot go out to the library or to the grocery store. This can happen because the person doesn't understand or remember that there are restrictions going on. They might not remember to physically distance and might always be angry with you because you won't take them out. So take a moment and think about that. It is easy to understand why anyone might feel anxious or overwhelmed during the current COVID pandemic. People who live with dementia may have additional challenges during times of change, especially rapid change. The experience of not being able to keep track of all that is happening, as well as to have the world become unfamiliar, confusing, and unpredictable, can create anxiety. This environment is ripe with factors that could overwhelm any of us, so it is understandable that an increase in reactive behaviours or more difficulty controlling them may present new challenges for people living with dementia and those who care for them. While anxiety is quite different from anger, anxiety often leads to agitation, which may be expressed as anger or distress, which can be a challenging response for both the person experiencing it and the person receiving it. Try not to take the responsive behaviour personally. They are doing the best they can to manage the anxiety that comes with the changes they have experienced recently. Symptoms that may make a person living with dementia's experience more challenging during rapid times of change include memory impairment. With so much information coming at us all day, every day, and constantly changing, it can be hard for people living with dementia to follow the ongoing story of rapidly changing events. Problems with memory make it very hard to keep track of what is going on. This can lead to the uncomfortable feelings for people living with dementia, which may lead to an increase in responsive behaviours. Memory problems could increase the risk if the person cannot remember safety recommendations. People with dementia may confuse the present with the past, fact with fiction. Information overload. This can make a person living with dementia very fatigued, which could increase the incidence of responsive behaviours. Behaviours that may indicate that the person is overloaded include angry outbursts, distress or increased confusion, wanting to leave or to go to sleep, or asking for a parent who may have died long ago. Impaired judgment or lack of awareness of the severity of the risk to health. Maybe they believe it's okay to go to the daughter's house to visit because they are not ill, or maybe they no longer pay attention to the news and are unaware of the efforts being made to improve the trajectory of COVID-19. Caregivers may have challenges keeping the person at home. If the person living with dementia can't understand the justification for the physical distancing requirements, They may be angry that they cannot enjoy their regularly scheduled activities. Caregivers may be accused of being bossy or controlling if the person does not understand the task. Yes, have you heard "Who Made You the Boss?" Or something like that recently? I think a lot of you may have. People living with dementia often experience increasing challenges with communication. Impairments in communication are often exacerbated by stress and fatigue. However, as the verbal skills of people living with dementia decline, their ability to read the emotions and body language of others remains functional. It is possible for Mr. Smith to not be able to fully understand the changes and challenges the world is undergoing during COVID, but he may sense that Mrs. Smith is upset by something. He may know she's worrying a lot these days. He hears her concerned and sad tone when she talks to their daughter on the phone in the evening. He may sense something is wrong, even if he cannot even understand the situation. He might think he's done something wrong, or you're talking about him. This can cause an anxious state, and he worries about her or what he doesn't know, which could lead to an increase in responsive behaviours. People with dementia can be highly sensitive to emotional environment at home and will quickly pick up on other people's tension and anxiety. Some people living with dementia may have a hard time not thinking about things that are worrying them. I know they have short-term memory loss, but if there's a strong emotional component and it's a worry, they will focus on that. Their anxiety can cause them to repeat the same question over and over, or to focus on the topic that is causing the stress. They may become focused on getting all the latest details, hearing the latest news, or discussing and preparing for an event that may happen. This is often a response to the feelings of losing control, which causes anxiety and increased responsive behaviours. This can be a huge challenge for family caregivers who are living with a person with dementia. This is a good example of a situation caregivers can call the First Link Dementia Helpline to have a confidential discussion around strategies to managing challenging behaviours, such as anxiety, repetition, delusions, or hallucinations. The loss of our regular daily scheduled activities has forced us all to look at options to help us adapt to the new normal we are experiencing as a result of the recent unexpected changes. For example, prior to these changes, Joan had several physical fitness activities in her regular weekly schedule. Her husband accompanied her to Minds in Motion on Monday afternoons. She did yoga with her daughter on Wednesday evenings, and she walked with her neighbour Mary for 45 minutes every second day. Now that all of these activities are on hold, there is little routine to Joan's daily life, and she finds it hard to find the initiative to get up and do something active. Her husband has begun walking with her in the mornings to provide consistency, but it can be challenging for Joan to find the initiative to get up and go now that her routine is unfamiliar. So the person will appear to be depressed. It's important to acknowledge that no two people with dementia are the same, and that each person's experience of and the ability to manage times of change is different as well. Because of this, it is difficult to predict what symptoms may increase or appear. We do know that often during stressful times, symptoms will appear or become more pronounced. So you might have seen some little bit of agitation, anxiety, or even a few angry outbursts now and then. But now that things have changed, you're seeing it more often, and you might be seeing it with more intensity. All new symptoms should be documented and reported to the person's physician to rule out illness or injury. It's a good idea to document each time, because that way you might be able to identify some of those triggers we talked about earlier. Change is hard for everyone. As we have discussed, dementia may make responding to change more difficult. Let's review some care strategies or self-care strategies that can help us all stay well during these times of rapid change. Implementing strategies and activities that promote physical, emotional, and social health will help us all to build resilience and reduce our responsive behaviours. At a time when things are changing fast, it often feels like we've lost control, but there are things we can all do to take control of our health and well-being. Practice self-care Be kind to yourself. It is okay to be sad, mad, bored, anxious, and lonely. It is to be expected during these times. Recognize that you need time to process your experience and to figure out your new normal. Take care of yourself every day. It may be that you're not able to get away for long periods during the day now, or to sort of shut yourself away. But even if you can find 10 or 15 minutes here and there throughout the day, just so that you can take a breath, close your eyes, attend to yourself. Ensure all of your needs are being met now that your regular schedule and routine are on hold. Ensure you continue to eat well and have a consistent sleep routine. Adapt activities at home that ensure that you still get physical exercise. Stay connected to people you used to engage with regularly by phone or on an online meeting platform like Skype or Zoom. Write the new schedule down and post it on the wall so both people living with dementia and caregivers can see activities scheduled for the day. Example, garden walk, 8 a.m. Skype meeting with Dale and the girls at 10 a.m. Lunch at noon. Listen to music at 2 p.m. If watching the news is upsetting or provokes anxiety, be aware of your exposure to this information. It's not necessary to be following the news all day, and it may be healthier to identify one or two trusted sources and get updates at set times during the day. For example, you could watch the news in the morning and then the BC Ministry of Health's daily briefing in the afternoon. Turning off the news can be difficult if you're at home and all your regular activities have been cancelled. This is one of the reasons why it's so important to build a daily schedule for yourself. Filling in the time with other activities will direct your attention during the day. It will also help the person with dementia follow the course of the day so that they have an idea whether it's morning, noon, afternoon, or night. In our last webinar called Activities to Do at Home, which you can watch the recording of on the Alzheimer's Society of BC's website, we reviewed different types of activities to include in your daily routine to ensure that needs are met and well-being is promoted. A big factor in managing change is being able to adapt. This is not easy. Be open to doing things in a new way. Be creative in exploring new activities to pass the time. It's important to stay active. Build physical activity into your daily routine. Consider the options for staying connected to others during this challenging time. Although we cannot visit a person we live with in a world where technology can connect us every day, schedule social time into your routine. Chat on the phone or play chess online together. Think of who you can turn to for support and stay connected to from home. We all need support to get through this. This isn't forever, and it is important that we all stay socially connected. So what strategies have you found helpful while adapting to the recent changes to daily life? You may not have given it a lot of thought, but I'm sure you've already adapted some strategies that are working for you. I've been lucky enough to hear some incredible strategies from people, such as arranging for family to do a Skype or a Zoom call with their dad while the wife ducks in to the shower and has half an hour to herself without him perhaps coming to the door looking for her. So that's a great strategy for self-care. I've heard a lot about people making up calendars for what they do each day of the week and putting that schedule in there, and as they go through their day, ticking off or striking off everything they've done that is on the daily schedule. And people with dementia really do respond well to that. They need structure. They need familiarity. So hopefully you've already adapted some strategies, and hopefully by the end of this webinar you'll be considering some more for yourself. The strategies we were just discussing apply to all of us. We will now look at strategies to consider for supporting people who are living with the double challenge of living with dementia while coping with a rapidly changing environment. By adapting the environment, adapting the way we communicate, lowering our own stress levels, and engaging the person with dementia in meaningful activities, we can lower their stress and enable them to function at their optimum level. We can support the person with dementia through rapidly changing events by trying to understand their experience and recognizing how the environment can trigger responsive behaviours. This requires that we adapt the environment. This may involve things such as controlling the amount of exposure to the news a person living with dementia experiences, ensuring that if they cannot remember the physical distancing requirements, that they are protected from risk of contamination, building a new daily schedule to meet the needs of the new normal. Also, this refers to adapting activities to the environment. For example, if you can't go to regularly scheduled exercise class at the community centre, you can walk laps around the house or around the garden if you have one. And if you can't attend concerts right now, you could join in an online sing-along. We must adapt how we communicate and try to understand the other person's experience to identify the meaning behind their behaviour. This means meeting them where they are at this moment. Their reality may be different, but it is their reality. Respond to them in ways that are meaningful to their experience. For example, lately Helen has been getting up and asking to go home. She misses her mum. But rather than arguing about what year it is and that mum passed away long ago, Helen's daughter says, "I know you miss your mum, but she's going to be out for most of the day. Let's make a cup of tea just the way she makes it." Family members who are at home with a person who lives with dementia need to manage their own stress responses. As well as being confusing and distressing for a person living with dementia, and unmanaged stress responses over an extended period of time can be detrimental to your own well-being. You've got to look after yourself if you're caring for someone with dementia. If you don't, you're not going to be a good, effective caregiver, and where's that going to leave the person with dementia? So you need to be number one. And finally, we can support people living with dementia to manage change by engaging them in activities that are meaningful to them. We're running out of time right now, but if you are interested in learning more about communication strategies or understanding dementia and behaviour, as well as tips for activities and the importance of routine at home or building caregiver resilience, visit the Alzheimer's Society of BC's website. We have recorded webinars posted there on all of these topics. As well, we are now hosting weekly webinars, so check out what's coming up in the next weeks. If you have any questions about living with dementia or caregiving for someone who lives with dementia, please don't hesitate to call our First Link Dementia Helpline. The phone numbers and hours are on this slide. It might be helpful to write the number down and keep it handy. We are so thankful that you tuned in today and listened in to our webinar. We hope you found it useful. Thank you.